So this leads us to the Mishnah on Daf Nun Aleph Amid Beis. And our Mishnah here that we're about to learn is going to describe what we call Hilucho Shel Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol enters into the Kodesh Kadoshim through the Heichal. So first he enters into the Heichal from the Azara, and from the Heichal he enters into the Kodesh Kadoshim. The Heichal has a width of 20 amma, and when you get to the end of the Heichal, what separates the Heichal from the Kodshei Kodshim is a mechitza. There's going to be a separation. And this is called a paroches. A paroches, a kind of a curtain that separates the Heichal when you reach the end of the Heichal before you cross into the Kodesh Kodashim. So there had to be a mechitza that would separate the two, otherwise somebody might violate the Isur of entering into the Kodesh Kodashim. And now we're going to have a machlokes in this Mishnah, believe it or not, about whether there was one paroches or two. So that issue about whether there's one paroches or two to separate the Heichal from the Kodesh Kodashim is going to bear in on the question of how the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippurim, when he entered from the Heichal into the Kodesh Kodashim, exactly how did he navigate to get from the entrance of the Heichal, which is on the eastern side, going west towards the Kodesh Kodashim. How did he go? And the Mishnah is going to record three shitos. We'll start with the shita of Rabbi Yehuda. He's walking in the Heichal towards the Kodesh Kodashim to maktir the Torres lifnai v'lifnim. He's now going to go towards the west, ad she magia levein shtei haparochos. There are going to be two parocheses that are going to separate the Heichal. So there's an outer paroches on the Heichal side, and then one amma beyond that going west towards the Kodesh Kodashim is going to be a second paroches, which is on the Kodesh Kodashim side. Amavdilos ben HaKodesh ben Kodesh Kodashim. Ubeineim amma. And the distance, the airspace between the outer mechitza, the paroches, which is on the Heichal side, and the inner mechitza, which is a paroches on the Kodesh Kodashim side, is one am. Rabbi Yossi denies it. Rabbi Yossi lo hoisa sham to separate the Heichal and Kodesh Kodashim el paroches achas bilvad. There was only one paroches. I'll prove it to you. Shenemar, it says with regard to the Mishkan in Shmos Chafav, vivdila paroches lachem bein HaKodesh ubein Kodesh Kodashim. There's only one paroches. So the Gemara immediately says, Shapir ka'amalu Rabbi Yossi l'Rabbanan. How are the Rabbanan going to deal with this pasuk that says explicitly there's only one paroches? For Rabbanan Amilcha, they'll respond, Hani mili b'mishkan. That the pasuk that you're quoting, Rabbi Yossi, and you have very good proof, but that's only as far as Mishkan is concerned. And as far as Mishkan is concerned, you went straight from the end of the Heichal, going west, into the Kodesh Kodashim. There was no airspace, and therefore one paroches is sufficient just to divide between the Heichal and the Kodesh Kodashim. Aval b'beis hamikdash hasheni. With regard to the second Beis Hamikdash, there they set up a space between, a space of one amma between the Heichal and the Kodesh Kodashim. And Kaven de Lohavi Ama Traxin. And there was no thick mechitza, as there was in Bais Rishon, to separate the Heichal from the Kodesh Kadoshim. In Bais Rishon, you had an Ama Traxin, which means a wall that was 1 Ama thick that separated between the Kodesh Kadoshim and the Heichal. The Mikdash Rishon, who dehavi, there was this kosel that was a mechitza between the two, and there was no airspace because any space of an amma between the end of the Heichal and the beginning of the Kodesh Kadosh was filled in by this very thick mechitza. So the truth is, we didn't have to know in Bais Rishon where does the Heichal end and where does the Kodesh Kadoshim begin, because the entire amma that separated the two was filled in by this very thick wall. But now that wall doesn't exist anymore. And in Bais Sheni, the Amma Traxin didn't exist. Now that Amma is airspace and there's no mechitza there, the Rabbanan vacillated. What is the status of that Amma? Is it ikilifnim? It has the status of the Kodesh Kadoshim, and in which case we would have to put the paroches on the outer side, meaning an amma into the Heichal, so to speak, at the end of the Heichal, to indicate that beyond that end of the Heichal, that amma, which was in the first Mikdash taken up by Mechitza, that belongs to the Kodesh Kadoshim. Ikilachutz. Or does the sanctity of that area that was in Bais Rishon taken up by the Mechitza has the status of the Heichal? It's not kilifnim, it's not like the Kodesh Kadoshim, in which case we would have to set up a paroches that would be on the inner side, meaning towards the Kodesh Kadoshim. So again, let's just go over it. It's very simple. I don't want to make it sound too complicated. I mean, there's plenty of complicated sugyas in Masechet Yoma. I don't have to make this one of them. This one is pretty straightforward. If we assume that this area called an Amma, which is now airspace in Bais Sheni, belongs to the Kodesh Kadoshim, then we should put the paroches on the outer side towards the Heichal. If, on the other hand, it belongs to the Heichal, then we should put the Mechitza, meaning this paroches, on the inner side, inside the Amma. So at the end, we're going to have 2 parocheses indicating the 2 different possible statuses of this Amma. The Ovid Shtei Parochos. So now, because of the suffix, we have to set up 2 parochos separated by 1 Amma, and one is going to be at the end of the Kodesh Kadoshim. One's going to be at the end of the Heichal, and that's how we understand the Chachamim in our Mishnah. Okay, now let's get back to the main subject of our discussion, and that is a halicha, as we said before, when the Kohen Gadol enters into the Heichal on his way towards the Kodesh Kadoshim in order to be maktir the Torahs, l'fnai v'l'fnim. How exactly did he go? We're going to see a number of possibilities of how he navigated on his halicha through the Heichal. We'll just mention the obvious, that we're going from east to west as we enter into the Heichal until we finally enter into the Kodesh Kadoshim. We'll mention that in the Heichal, we have the following. We have on the right side, which is called Tzafon, and I think we've mentioned this in the past, that when you turn right, you're looking towards the Tzafon if you're going from east to west. So there's a kosel on that side. And then on the Durham, the south side, towards your left, there's another kosel. In between, you have the following. You have the Shulchan, which is on the northern side, on your right side. You've got the menorah, which is directly parallel to the Shulchan on the left side, meaning on the Durham side. And smack in the middle of the Heichal, you have what's called the Mizbeach HaPnimi, the Mizbeach HaZah. Okay. Now, let's start with Rabbi Yehuda. Tana Rabbana. According to Rabbi Yehuda, Bein HaMizbeach LaMenorah Hoya Mahalach. The Kohen Gadol would go through the area between the Mizbeach. We said the Mizbeach is right in the center, smack in the middle of the Heichal. The menorah, again, the menorah, that's easy. It's always on the Durham. It's always on the south side. So that Rabbi Yehuda, Divrei Rabbi Yehuda, he wants the Kohen Gadol to move towards the south, meaning towards the left. And he's going to navigate between the Mizbeach and the menorah. The Mizbeach in the middle and the menorah on the left, which means on the south. That's Shita number one. Now we have Shita number two, is Rabbi Meir Omer. He's going to turn towards the right, towards the Tzafon. Bein Shulchan, the Mizbeach. Remember, we said that the Shulchan is on the Tzafon side, Mizbeach in the middle. So he's going to navigate between the Shulchan and the Mizbeach, not between, as Rabbi Yehuda would have it, the menorah on the left, on the south side, and the Mizbeach, but rather between the Shulchan on the right side, the Tzafon side, and the Mizbeach. The Yesh Omrim, and now we have a third opinion, that true, Rabbi Meir is correct. We're on the Tzad Tzafon, but not between the Mizbeach and the Shulchan, but rather between the Shulchan and the Kotza. Meaning, once we're going towards the north, then go all the way towards the north and make a beeline up the Kotzel, so he's to the right of the Shulchan, which is called Bein Shulchan L'Kotzel. The Gemara now clarifies, Man Yesh Omrim, who is the sheet of the Yesh Omrim? And now at this point in the Sugya, we're going to connect our Mishnah about whether it was one parochas or two parochases with this machlokas about the hiluch of the Kohen Gadol. Omar Rav Chizra Rav Yossi, the Omar, he said in our Mishnah that separating the Heichal and the Kodesh Kadosh was only one single paroches, upischa, and the opening in the parochas to enter into the Kodesh Kadoshim was B'tzafon, it was on the northern side. So therefore he would go up the northern flank, which means immediately to his right is the Kosel Atzfoni. And that's how he went through the Heichal, the entire length of the Heichal, on the Tzafon until he got to that Pesach, which was on the Tzafon. Because again, there's only one parochas. Rabbi Yehuda. Now, Rabbi Yehuda, if you remember, said everything is on the south. He actually has the Kohen Gadol moving between the menorah and the Mizbeach on the south side. Amalecha, he's of the opinion that Pischa b'daram kai, that the Pesach was through the outer paroches, and that was on the southern side. Meaning that Rabbi Yehuda maintained that there were two paroches. And I have a picture of it here. Rabbi Yehuda's Shita, basically, Rabbi Yehuda has the Kohen Gadol going, passing the Mizbeach in the middle of the Heichal, then passing the menorah on his left, which is on the Doro. And then, as he continues beyond the menorah on the south side, he now comes to two parochas. And there's going to be an opening between the outer parochas, which is closer to the Heichal, the inner parochas, if you want to call it that. No, I don't want to call it the inner parochas because that's confusing. But the parochas will say on the Heichal side, and the parochas that's closer to the Kodesh Kadoshim, and that's where the Pesach was, on the south side between the two parochas. But now we have a problem with Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir was the one who had the hiluch of the Kohen Gadol going on the northern side, meaning on the right side, B'tzad Safon, between the Shulchan and the Mizbeach on the right side. Kiman Svirle. Where is the opening into the parochas? Isvirle Karabyu, Ikarabyu the Svirle is nail let the halicha the Kohen Gadol be Ki Rabbi Yehuda. You should go towards the south side, and he should be walking between the Mizbeach and the menorah. Ikar Rabbi Yossi Svirle, if he agrees to Rabbi Yossi that the Pesach was on the northern side, is a nail Ki Rabbi Yossi. Why doesn't he go up the northern side like Rabbi Yossi? And he should go between the kosel all the way on the north and the shulchan immediately on his left. Why is he maneuvering, according to Rabbi Meir, in the area between the shulchan and the mizbeach? Li Olam says the Gemara Rabbi Yossi Svirle, which means there was only one paroches, and the opening of that paroches into the Kodesh Kedoshim was on the tzafon, and therefore we know clearly why he would not walk towards the daram between the mizbeach and the menorah, as Rabbi Yehuda would have it. But the Amalecha, if you ask Rabbi Meir to give us a reasoning why he should be walking between the shulchan and the mizbeach and not between the shulchan and the kosel on the northern side. And now the Gemara is going to say that technically he couldn't walk, according to Rabbi Meir, between the kosel and the shulchan because there were, as we'll soon see, shulchanos that blocked his way. In other words, Moshe Rabbeinu, at the time the Mishkan had only one shulchan, and there was plenty of room between the shulchan and the kosel ha-tzfoni. However, Yoma Melech, it says in Divrei Yomim, Vayas shulchanos asara, he added 10 additional shulchanos, Vayinach ba'heichal chamisha miyamin v'chamisha mismol. Again, very ambiguous. There were 10 tables. Each table we'll see was 2 amos, and he put 5 on the right side, 5 on the left side. We're not sure what that means. The Gemara actually in Masechet Menachos records a machlokes tanoim about how to interpret exactly how these shulchanos were set up. According to Rabbi Eliezer Reb Shimon, the shulchanos were li'arkan mitzafon lidaram, which means that they were blocking that entire area going up the tzafon because the shulchanos 5 and 5 on the 2 sides of the shulchan were attached to each other, and each shulchan was 1 amos. Each shulchan was 2 amos. So if you have 5 shulchanos attached to the other, that takes up 10 amos. That takes up the entire tzad tzafon on both the western side of the shulchan and the eastern side of the shulchan, on both sides of the shulchan. Rebbe has a different shita in which the shulchanos were organized according to Rebbe mi mizrach l'marav, going straight up and down. But our sugya of Rabbi Meir reflects the shita of Rabbi Eliezer Reb Shimon, and therefore, if the shulchanos were organized from right to left on 2 sides of the shulchan of Moshe Rabbeinu, then there's no way possible for the Kohen Gadol to go all the way up with the kosel of the kosel atzfoni on his right side, because he would immediately bang into the shulchanos. And that's what the Gemara says over here, that since each shulchan was 2 amos in length, therefore shulchanos l'tzafon v'ledaram munachim, right? So the heads of each shulchan were going from north to south, blocking the hiluch, the makom hiluch of the Kohen Gadol, and therefore, according to Reb Meir, he had to go around the shulchan. And the shulchan on the northern side, and this entire row of 5 and 5 shulchanos, each shulchan 2 amos took up the entire width of the northern side of the Heichal, because there's only 20 amos in the Heichal. So 10 amos were taken up by 5 shulchanos, each of a length of 2 amos. And therefore, you had to go between the shulchan and the mizbeach. Ibai Seiman, the Gemara now offers another interpretation to try to figure out Rabbi Meir's shita. Li olam, Rabbi Meir himself could agree with Mizrach Lamarav that these 10 shulchanos were going up and down the Heichal, from east up to west, which means we're back to square one. We don't understand why Rabbi Meir would not encourage the Kohen in his hiluch to go all the way up the Kosel Hatzvoni. And the answer is Mishum Shechina Lav Orech Ara. That since the Kodesh Kodashim is the quintessential location for the Shechina, therefore it's not Derech Eretz. So let's turn to Daf Nun Beis to try to get a feeling as to why this is not Derech Eretz for the Kohen Gadol to go up the northern ramp with the, his shoulder connected, so to speak, to the Kosel Ha-Tzfonim. The male Leheja, to go into the Kodesh Kodashim, Leheja means like the Gilu. A person is walking up with the Kosel Hatzfoni on his right side, straight through the Heichal. And every moment he's looking at the Pesach, the opening of the Kodesh Kodashim, which is Kenegdo. And he's looking into the Kodesh Kodashim from the beginning, from the moment he enters into the Heichal, because that's where the Pesach is opening, on the northern side. And that's considered B're'iyah b'Kodesh Kodashim, that constant gaze into the Kodesh Kodashim is Prikas Ol Yira Shamayim. That's not the awe and the fear that we have to have for Almighty God. Therefore, the Kohen Gadol would move a little bit towards his left, Li'ever HaPesach, so he's not really now walking Keneged HaPesach, and he's going to walk between the Shulchan and the Mizbech, not next to the Kosel. The Gemara now wants to explain Rabbi Yossi. For Rabbi Yossi, who says that he should walk between the Shulchan and the Kosel Hatzfoni to the right of the Shulchan, and there's no problem with Derech Eretz. He's going to go straight on a beeline into the opening of the Kodesh Kodashim where the Shechina is. I'll say to you, this is not a deficit in Derech Eretz, because Chaviv in Yisrael, Shlo Tzrichan HaKosav L'Shliach, God did not require that a person appoint a proxy to pray on his behalf. Each Jew can come in front of God with a direct encounter and pray. And the Kohen Gadol is the Shliach to do the Avodah in the Mikdash on Yom Kippurim. He's Chaviv Fnei Hashem. He's beloved in the eyes of God. V'yachal ikanes begilui, and if he goes, directly begilui in this halicha, the entire length of the Heichal, Keneged Pesach Kodesh Kodashim, that is not a chisaron in Derech Eretz. Now the Gemara asks the kasha on Rabbi Yehuda, who says that the Kohen Gadol was mahalach beHeichal Dromo in order to enter into the Kodesh Kodashim, and he walked between the Mizbeach and the menorah. Is Rabbi Yehuda Nami Neil Bein Menorah Lakosel? Why is Rabbi Yehuda, who has the Kohen Gadol going up the south side, the left side, why is he insisting that he move a little bit towards the right and he should walk on the Durham side between the Mizbeach and the menorah? Why not go all the way over to the left, to the Kosel Hadromi, and he should be on the Durham side of the menorah, between the menorah and the Kosel? And the Gemara answers that if he would go between the menorah and the Kosel, Mishachrei Moneh, because of the smoke that comes from the menorah, he may passel and disqualify his big day kuna. They may get dirty. Yashchiru b'gadav me ashan hamenorah. And in fact, the Kosel Adromi was dark. It was black because it got blackened by the smoke of the menorah. The menorah is on the south side. And if the Kohen Gadol were to walk up that south side, the smoke coming out of the menorah, just like it blackens the Kosel, blacken his begadim. And Big Day Kodesh and Islachachu are psulim, and that's the sugi in Zvachim Daf Yud Ches, and that would passel his avod. Now, the Gemara that we're going to study in Mitzvah tomorrow is going to clarify a suffix of the Chacham as far as the mechitza between the Heichal and the Kodesh Kodashim that was in the Bayis Rishon. Amar Rabbi Nosson Amatraxin lo echriu bo Chachamim ikilefnim ikilechut. So the status of that kosel, that mechitza, which was one amma thick that separated between the Heichal and the Kodesh Kodashim in Bayis Rishon, the Chacham did not come to any definite conclusion if it's considered part of the Pnim, which means it's considered Kodesh Kodashim, or Kilachutz, or it's considered part of the Heichal. And Maskif la Ravina, my timer, what's the reasoning that the Chacham had a suffix about this, where this Amma is part of the Kodesh Kodashim or part of the Heichal? And the Gemara is going to go on to analyze this suffix. So that's where we're going to pick it up in Mirza Shem tomorrow. Have a great day.